Today, I'm going to be listing my favorite game every year since the Switch has been released. Unlike a lot of other ranking videos, I'm not going to pretend like my word is final, and I actually need your help. Since I haven't played every game in the Switch's history, I'm going to rank the games like this. First, I'll give a full description of the biggest games released in every year, and then I'll say my favorite title. If you noticed I didn't give enough credit to one of your favorite games, I'd love for you to leave a comment explaining why it's the best. I'd even encourage you to make your own ranking below. The Switch is one of the greatest consoles of all time, so everyone's favorite games of the years are valid. But without further ado, let's begin with probably the most jam-packed year of all time, 2017. The launch year of the Switch was surprisingly insane when it came to first-party releases. Breath of the Wild, Mario Odyssey, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Splatoon 2, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, I mean, this is nuts. Since there are so many big names, I'll try to go through them pretty quick. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, so this game was originally released on the Wii U, but in this upgraded deluxe edition, we got a bunch of new stuff. New characters, vehicles, a revamped battle mode, smart steering, and even dual item capacity. Splatoon 2 was also a very great follow-up to a Wii U game, bringing in the fan-favorite new series to the Switch. I really have nothing bad to say about Splatoon 2, and it added new weapons, stages, gear, and overall it had everything a Splatoon fan could want in a sequel. Super Mario Odyssey. This was the long-awaited next entry in the 3D Mario series, and it certainly did not disappoint. For the first time, Mario was incorporating open world elements into their game. While it still had a level select system, the levels themselves were massive and were giant sandboxes for platforming. The gameplay was amazing too. It was like everything great about every Mario game's controls put into one movement system. This was so close to being my favorite game of 2017, but there's just one game I have over it. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is not that game because I haven't played it, but I have heard great things about it, so if you have played it, please let me know how it is. The actual best game of 2017 in my opinion is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. I mean, look, this is one of the greatest games of all time, so of course it has to win the year. Making such a leap into the 3D open world genre was a risky decision for such a rigid series like Zelda, but it worked wondrously. It's definitely not a perfect game and has issues with pacing and dungeon design, but I think it just gave the world such a unique and enjoyable experience. The level of wonder and exploration I felt during the first playthrough of Breath of the Wild was like no other. Moving into 2018, there was unsurprisingly not that much. After such a big launch year, there was a lull in the games. However, we still have two big releases. The first was Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. While it was a controversial release, I don't think it was a bad game. The main issue people had with this was that it was a remake of the first generation of Pokemon, except it was made too easy, like for kids. Encounters with wild Pokemon were changed to use the Pokemon Go catching system, and you were given an Eevee or Pikachu that was insanely overpowered. That being said, it was actually pretty fun once I stopped expecting it to be this insane new Pokemon adventure. Besides this game, there was really only one other option for the best game, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. I mean, this game completely dominated the year and beyond, and was the most competitive Smash game since Melee. For both casual and hardcore fans of the series, Smash Ultimate was the coolest thing ever. I remember how often me and my friends would get together to play this game, and for that, it has a special place in my heart. It is easily the best Switch game of 2018. Contrasting with the somewhat barren 2018, 2019 had quite a few games for us to play. Luigi's Mansion 3, Pokemon Sword and Shield, a remake of Link's Awakening, Super Mario Maker 2, the list can go on. When I first got Luigi's Mansion 3, I was really expecting to be blown away, and it definitely was fun, but I just couldn't get through the whole game. Visually, it was a stunning game, which was surprising since Luigi's Mansion seems to be like a series that they wouldn't go so hard for. Gameplay-wise, it was alright. Maybe Luigi's Mansion just stopped appealing to me after a while, but for some reason I just didn't like the hotel setting or even the gameplay loop. Maybe if I go back to it, I'll like it more, I don't know. Pokemon Sword and Shield was a super anticipated game for the Switch, starting the next generation. However, it was also very controversial because before it was even released, people knew that every Pokemon wasn't going to be obtainable in the game, which divided the community. When the game came out, people got even more mad once they saw how poorly the game ran in the new wild areas. Look, for Pokemon's first attempt at somewhat open world gameplay, I think it could have been worse, but it was still disappointing, let's be real. The remake of Link's Awakening was another game people had a lot of hype for, but was somewhat controversial too. The main argument against this game was the art style they went for here, which was typically either loved or hated. Personally, it wasn't for me, but I thought the game itself was pretty fun and solid. I think it was a really cool experience, especially if you grew up with the original Link's Awakening too. Obviously, I wouldn't know anything about that, but my mom played it, and she seems to have a fun time with the remake. But aside from these games, my favorite is actually Super Mario Maker 2. too. Look, I know this might be divisive, but I think that this game got overlooked a little too fast, even by me. I will admit, I didn't love this game as much as I did the original, but I think that it gave us a lot of really cool new level design options. I've always been someone who has liked creating, and I love playing fan versions of games, and Mario Maker 2 brought this feeling to the Switch for me. Honestly, if the original Mario Maker didn't release on Wii U, I think this concept would seem really novel and people would have liked it a lot more. Anyway, going into 2020, I don't think anyone's going to try to argue against this pick as there's really only one option. Animal Crossing New Horizons is obviously the best game of the year. This release single-handedly got people through the lonely times of this year, and it introduced millions to the series. There were a few other releases in 2020, but they were mostly remakes or remasters, and I don't think that they were so good that they should be considered the best over Animal Crossing. I don't even particularly like New Horizons that much as a die-hard Animal Crossing fan, but I have to acknowledge how important it was for the culture and the business side of Nintendo. 2021 was a year that I honestly did not have much of a care for the Switch. There were a lot of games released, but none in the franchises that I played. And the ones that were in those franchises were either remasters or remakes. Honestly, the only game I looked forward to was Mario Golf, and that ended up being kinda mid. Normally I would take this opportunity to crap on Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl because that came out this year, but you know what, I'm not gonna waste my time on that game. We all know how disappointing it was for fans of the original Gen 4s. Outside of my own personal bias though, 2021 was not a bad year for gamers. Monster Hunter Rise, I know, is a game a lot of people loved. Metroid Dread was one of the best reviewed games released for the Switch that year, and Metroid fans are honestly just happy if anything gets released for their franchise. And of course I have to mention 3D World plus Bowser's Fury. I never particularly loved 3D World, but plenty of people do, so I wouldn't be mad saying this is the best game released considering how cool Bowser's Fury was. I mean, true open world Mario is something we'd never seen before, and seeing Nintendo experiment with it was awesome. I definitely want to know what you guys have to say about 2021 because there was a lot released in franchises I'm just simply unfamiliar with. 2022 was probably the best year for Switch games since 2017. I'm talking Pokemon Legends Arceus, Scarlet and Violet, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, Splatoon 3, and this is just first-party releases. Sonic Frontiers was a giant leap for the Sonic franchise, taking things into a more atmospheric and open-world perspective. It was a pretty divisive game amongst the fans, but most people generally liked it enough. This year we also got a port of Persona 5 Royal, which is, in my opinion, the best game released on the Switch this year, but since it technically didn't originally come out this year, I know people are going to complain. I don't know, that's just my opinion. The Kirby and Xenoblade releases, I heard great things about, but I personally haven't gotten around to them, so let me know what you guys have to say about that. Splatoon 3 was a game I did play a bit, and I actually loved it. Splatoon has never really disappointed me, and while I don't typically put that many hours into it anymore, I thought this was once again a great entry into the series. Now, the Pokemon games. So Scarlet and Violet definitely is a great game. The issues just lie in a lot of the controversies around it. I mean, the performance issues cannot be overlooked, and we have to admit that this is kind of an ugly game sometimes. The actual gameplay is pretty interesting. I mean, I don't know, the open world stuff can be boring, but it's pretty cool to have an open world mainline Pokemon game. And I love the idea of Pokemon being a super organized thing in the Paldea region. Personally though, I loved Legend Arceus a lot more. First of all, the game ran way better and the landscapes looked cleaner, but aside from this, I think that it did open world gameplay better too. It sort of took the Breath of the Wild approach of embracing some of the mundane parts of open world and trying to actually build that atmosphere a little bit more, while Scarlet and Violet's open world just feels like trying to get from point A to point B and there's just nothing in between. Legends Arceus world is very fun to explore and see what kind of Pokemon you'll find in different habitats. So for that reason, I'm going to say Legends Arceus is the best game released in 2022. 2023 was another fantastic year for the Switch, getting 3 giant first-party releases. Pikmin 4 finally came out after like a decade, and fans of the series were delighted. Pikmin really doesn't miss, and it was another great entry in the franchise. Then we got the first new 2D Mario in a long time, Super Mario Wonder. This completely changed what it meant to be a 2D Mario game, and everything that we knew from the new Super Mario Bros. Series was changed. The art style, the music direction were both different, the new level design and enemies were insanely creative and like nothing we'd seen before, and the gameplay itself was revolutionary. You had things like badges now that changed certain abilities that you had. There were new things called Wonder Seeds that would change the level into literally anything that you could think of and beyond. I mean, this game was so innovative that people almost immediately wanted to call it the best 2D Mario of all time, and honestly, I think it deserves that treatment. Finally, 2023 gave us the long-awaited sequel to Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, and let me just say now, this is the best game of the year. I know there's a lot of divisiveness around this game, but let's not pretend like it wasn't amazing. Living up to Breath of the Wild is something literally no game could ever do. But Tears of the Kingdom at least was able to bring back that world and still innovate. There's so many things in Tears of the Kingdom that when you go back to Breath of the Wild, you do miss. Building allowed for a new level of creativity that had the Zelda community turning into engineering majors for a few months. The story, while still a little bare, was able to actually be pretty coherent, and I liked it. And the dungeon design, well, it definitely was better than Breath of the Wild. Overall, while I don't like Tears of the Kingdom as much as I did the original, I think it was a phenomenal follow-up to it. And finally, 2024. Now, this year was a little less crazy than the others, but we still got a few games. The remake of Thousand Year Door, The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, Mario & Luigi Brothership, and Sonic X Shadow were some of the biggest names. Now, this Sonic game was surprisingly big when it dropped. I've literally only heard good things about it, and it seems like Sonic is on a bit of a generational run these days. I was never a diehard Sonic fan or anything, and I did like it a lot as a kid, but I can tell that this is one of the best releases from the series in a while, reviewing well with fans and critics. As for Mario & Luigi Brothership, I haven't gotten around to beating it yet. I have played a bit of it though, and it seemed pretty fun. As someone who's played all the Mario and Luigi games, it seems like a decent enough follow-up to them. I mean, at the very least, it's better than Paper Jam was. The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom is another game that I haven't gotten around to beating yet, but it was pretty cool. Personally, I don't love the art style coming back from Link's Awakening, but it does work pretty well here. The concept is really cool though, and anyone who loves traditional puzzle solving that we haven't gotten in a while for Zelda probably will love this game. And finally, the remake of Thousand Year Door. I mean, this is the perfect remake in my eyes. The Thousand Year Door is in my top 5 favorite games of all time, and I was so excited to finally get my hands on this game. Sure, not much changed in the actual gameplay or story, but it didn't really need to be changed. I was really only looking for graphical and musical upgrades and other quality of life stuff. I know people will get angry at me if I put a remake as my best game, but this is my list, and that's what I feel is best. You know, making this list has made me kind of realize how many games I just haven't been able to get around to these days. I mean, to be fair, some of these games are quite long, but also like money is a thing, and paying $70 for a bunch of games every year just isn't always realistic. That's the great thing about the internet though. I can understand what games I'll enjoy or won't enjoy based on what people have to say or document about them online. So now that I've probably angered some of you with my list, I'm curious to see your best games in the comments. If you've made it this far in the video, thank you. I'm trying to hit 10k subs this year, but almost 99% of my viewers aren't even subscribed, so I'd love for you to help me fix that number. I also have a Patreon in the top link in the description if you want to support the channel, and you can join the channel as a member next to the subscribe button. Thank you for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.